before?
So then I was the Alpine specialist for the Western region.
Yeah.
And Willie Pfisterer, who was second on the competition, ended up with Jasper, Waterton, Glacier Revelstoke, and Kluane and Nahani.
Yeah.
And I had Bamfioho and Kootenay, Baffin Island, Ellesmere Island, Grossmorn, Cape Breton Islands.
Were those parks established at that time already?
Yeah, Pacific Rim, and the Queen Charlotte's.
Small area.
So I had 9 parks, and traveled all over constantly, and trained wardens in these various parks, and brought all the rescue equipment they needed in.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing that happened during this time, actually 1971, in 1970 I had 50 rescues to go to. And it was day and night because it all happened during June, July and August, you know. So I was constantly out. And the way we did rescues then was drive with a truck and horses, climb on a horse and go as far as you could. Then take the junk and climb up some mountain, load somebody who was mainly seriously injured, put him in a toboggan, try to carry him down, and by the time we got down they were usually dead because of all of the pounding and the problems. So, one day Bruno Engler, who was my neighbor, gave me a magazine and he said, you know, they had a helicopter rescue session in Europe, and you should look at this. So I got on the plane and flew to Europe and got together with Viggo Grumminger, who was the rescue chief in the world then.
Was that in Switzerland or?
That's in Germany, yeah, in Munich. But we first of all discussed the entire situation in Canada very seriously in the Hofbräu house with a lot of beer. And then he took me to his home, where I met Paula, his wife, who were sewing on a commercial sewing machine rescue seats and rescue bags. And after that session I came home with all of this stuff and all of the equipment and the knowledge of how to do helicopter sling rescue. And I came to the warden office and said to the guys, look, I have a completely new method, never tried here. And they said, go away. And I said, why? After I explained to them. And they said, well, I tell you what happened. The last week or so, a guy fell off the Yamnaska and was dead. And he was way up on the shale, above the tree line. And so we had a helicopter there. They put him in a bag. The helicopter put him on a long line. They tried to fly him down. And when the helicopter came down over the meadow down below, the load started to swing and swing and swing. And in order to save the pilot in the helicopter, he pressed the red button and this guy fell down.
He was dead anyway, right?
He was dead anyway.
Yeah.
So when I told them that we should hang ourselves on the helicopters and go to mountain rescue sites, they didn't think this would be a good idea. So anyway, Jim Davis, myself, would take me up 10 feet, drop me down, take me up 20 feet, drop me down, take me up on the ledge on Mount Cascade, drop me off, I unhook, come back, pick me up and bring me down. And very shortly after, all the wardens wanted to fly. So this is how this whole thing actually started.
So when you say drop me down from 20 feet, you mean
well, bring me back down, land me, you know, and then take me back up again. And so we practiced higher and higher till we made a few circles and up onto a ledge. And then you unclip, you're on the ledge alone, and then he comes back, you hook up again and fly down. So that really worked very well. The only devastating thing that happened was that Jay Morton hooked up and said to radio communication to Jim Davis, fly down Banff Avenue. So, so Steve Kuhn, who was superintendent, just had a bunch of Ottawa VIPs in his office, and they looked straight down Banff Avenue.
So how high was he above the ground?
Well, you know, a good distance, but over the power lines anyway.
Yeah.
And one of these guys from Ottawa said, Steve, there's one of your wardens coming down Banff Avenue. So I was called in and he said, if you ever do that again, you're fired. Okay. But that's how we started, you know. And now it's a national thing, you know. But all of this business with helicopter rescue was absolutely 100% life-saving, because whereas some rescues took 2-3 days, this with this method, you had let's say somebody up on Rundle, fairly high up in the gorge where everybody used to get hit, and the whole operation was over in 45 minutes. And the other thing was, it was incredibly money saving, because it was, even though the helicopter costs money to fly, but you only involved 2 people maybe, and flew in and flew out, whereas before you had a crew of maybe 12, 14 people, and horses and equipment and everything. I mean, it was just unbelievable, you know. Ottawa got very nervous about it, and I got back and forth to Ottawa quite often because of the cost factor and should. I went to a senior management meeting in Ottawa, and to give you an idea of how different, you know, attitudes are. And they basically said, why should we even go and rescue people? Why should we go definitely and pick up dead ones? Why not just leave them there? And so they called me into Ottawa and they gave me this big spiel of, you know, we should just leave bodies where they are on the mountains. And I said, you know, there's a thing called the Eisenhower Tower. And on the Eisenhower Tower, we've had so far 5 fatalities. Now, Americans love to come and climb the Eisenhower Tower because of the name. Yeah. What would it be like for the Canadian government to have reports appearing that these poor Americans trying to climb the Eisenhower Tower had to climb over cadavers and skeletons? So they just about threw me out. And this idea was not carried through.
Yeah.
The rescue system really worked well. You mentioned this little story. The fellow came to the warden office and said he wanted to find a place where he could meditate and be very alone and private and so forth. You know, off he went. He went up Cirque Lake Trail and ate all of his drugs, and that was it. Well, he didn't stay alone very long because a hiking group went up and they found him. So one gal came running down and reported that there was a guy up there who was obviously in terrible distress, looked like he was dying. So I flew in and loaded him up and went straight for the hospital with him in the bag, hanging underneath the machine. But I had just come back from Peru from another expedition and had a big full beard. So during the flight, his face is there and he opens his eyes, probably because of the air current and the wind and everything, it's getting pretty. And he looked at me and he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Peter." I guess he thought, "I'm Peter up there."
He thought he was flying to the pearly gates.
So, in any case, he tried to get out of the bucket. We still had a bucket then. So yeah, I'm lying on top of him, wrestling with this guy in midair, trying to make sure. But he passed out again, so we got him in the hospital and got him pumped out, and never heard of him again. I don't know. But we had lots of fun stories too, you know.
You definitely pioneered the rescue system for the parks.
Well, yeah. Well, that was my job, and I had 25 years with parks. Altogether, I had worked then 37 years for the federal government. And I tell you, the 25 years with parks were the most gorgeous years you can possibly imagine.